Well, all right, I already made the change to that one thing. What if I was wrong about everything? Do you want to walk me through all the different parts of this? Make sure I don't have any more mistakes in here somewhere?
Sure.
If you want to hang out with me on stream and ask me questions like this that are just burning a hole in your back pocket, the link is down in the description. I stream 4 days a week. Those days are up to interpretation, but I'm usually playing Football Manager. Kick it and say hey. You might have noticed that fairly recently I released a video where I talked about misconceptions that people have in tactical instructions, but I've never actually made a video going over all of the tactical instructions and how you should use them. And in these types of videos, in order to keep them short enough that I don't get 50 comments about get out of here about how I take too long to get through this video, because I am a windbag and each one of these videos could be an hour if Reese wasn't here. So this is Reese. Say thank you to Reese. Anyways, we're gonna have to move fairly quickly through these instruction things, so join me on the stream or join the Discord that you see down in the description. You can drop in there and ask questions if you don't understand anything. With that being said, let's get a move on. So when you go into a tactic, I've talked to you and made a video about how to set up your own tactic, how to orient these things, but we didn't really go into the instructions. We have this on the side. Mentality is something we will talk about another day, because it's basically towing the line between being an instruction and being, it's this overriding part of the game that we're not touching today. But there are 3 sections for your instructions. You have your instructions for your team when you are in possession, when the possession is in transition, and when you are out of possession. And successful tactics can have a lot of instructions and not a lot of instructions. That's something I just want to say off the top. You do not have to have an instruction in each section or even close to each section in this phase of play. I do not even pretend to be the best player in the world at this game. Where is it? Where's my accomplishment? We finished top of the table with Janeros very comfortably, with a team that was projected to finish first. I guess we did a pretty good job of that. How did I not notice that? So we've obviously done very well, and the same when I won the Champions League with Bate Borisov out of Belarus. I did not have a ton of instructions, but when you download a tactic from Nap, absolute legend of the tactic creation game, there will be instructions everywhere. You can succeed in a lot of ways in instructions. You do not have to take everything here. You can leave it up to player interpretation. That's just all I wanted to tell you. So your first section is the width of your attacking. Now this should be dictated by what part of the opposing team you want to exploit and where your players are aligned. So my players are typically going to be wide the way that we're set up. I've got 2 wingers, right? And obviously I have 2 fullbacks on the field as well. I'm not playing a 3 at the back system or anything. So we have, including a Metsala who's looking to get in this area too. We've got a lot of people that are looking to get wide. So I do not need to tell my team to create extra width. And sometimes if we're not getting enough people in the box, I will lower the width. If you make yourself more narrow, obviously that's going to help us get more bodies in the box, despite the fact that they're starting from a wider position. The next area is your approach play. Now, this is a very, very commonly hit button pass into space. Most of my Football Manager 20 experience was with Bate Borisov, and after the first 3 or 4 seasons, we were dominating the Belarusian League and trying to compete in the Champions League. So we were playing against teams almost exclusively that are worse than us. And I think when that's the case, and they are looking to take away space from you, passing into space is not successful. When you're playing with some of the biggest clubs in the world, though, and you're competing against other big clubs in the world, I think pass into space can still be effective as long as you are able to find spaces in their tactic to exploit. When you're watching it, pass into space will be effective. But fortunately, it is one of those instructions that tells you exactly what's happening. If you watch the other video, I've already talked about overlaps and underlaps, focusing your play down the left, through the middle, and to the right. Don't feel like you absolutely have to tell your team to play in one direction. I will typically, when I'm playing in a very high level, high pressure game, game, you leave this off for the first 15-20 minutes, and if you find your team having success in one area of the field, then you can tell your team to focus the play down the left, the middle, and the right. What I'd warn you about is if you want to have this as part of your tactic because you have a fabulous attacking midfielder, or one of the wings on one of your sides is just one of the best players in the world, or one of the best players in the division, that's all good and well, but you never know, unless you're doing a lot of opposition research, when you are going to come up against players that might be able to shut that particular person down, that have that skill level, when the next N'Golo Kante is coming up, and going to be able to take your attacking midfielder out of the game. And if you keep trying to feed that person the ball, you'll lose it. So just look out for that. The last one's play out of defense. If you do not have play out of defense ticked, it does not necessarily mean that your defense is just going to hoof the ball every single time. If you have play out of defense ticked, your defense is going to look to play their way out of trouble more often in a shorter way. So if you do not have defenders that you trust with the ball, at least kind of, then you should probably turn this off. But if you are a team that is looking to continue to keep the ball, that is looking to build the attacks, and that is looking to just maintain possession and kind of walk the ball up the field, then play out of defense is a good way to go. I would like to add a caveat to the last thing that I just said. It doesn't necessarily mean you're walking the ball up out of the field. If I've seen people do this in the past, where you take a great center back and you train them to attempt more long passes or try more killer through balls because they're just world class and a good ball playing center back, then play out of defense can mean that you're actually looking to pick out some threatening balls. If you don't have play out of defense ticked and they get in trouble, they will just look to clear it and reset, which is typically a lower league recommendation. Your passing directness is fairly obvious. What you're referring to here, just beware that as your mentality changes, not only does your passing directness change, but your tempo also changes. So if you want to keep your passing directness and tempo the same while you're changing mentalities, just keep that in mind. Your tempo is how often your team is going to get the ball and look to advance it up the field, whether that is dribbling, whether that is passing, long balls, short balls, whatever, how hard they are going to push against the wall that the other team is trying to build defensively. That is tempo. You can score a lot of goals on a lower tempo. That is a common misconception. But if you have a higher tempo, you'll be looking to score the goals faster, right? But you're more likely to turn the ball over. Time wasting is something that if you're the worst team and a draw is a desirable outcome, have it on. If you're in the last 20 minutes and you have the lead and you're nervous about it, have it on. If you're in the last 5 minutes and you're really nervous about it, have it on all the way. The first part of the final third is your crosses. Now, it's preset to be on mixed crosses. You have 3 options. You've got floated crosses, whipped crosses, and low crosses. I'm going to give you when you're going to want to use these options. So if you have somebody that is a forward that is very good off the ball or is very good in the air, or both, floated crosses, because it will give them an opportunity to either find a good space to score, or it will give them an opportunity to go up and win the ball before anybody else on the defense can get up that high and win the ball. But what a whip cross is, basically they'll get the ball wide and the guy will take the ball and just hit it as hard as he can across the box. So if you got a lot of people in there, say every header you're trying to win is like a 2-3v1, I will typically go for whipped crosses just for 15 or 20 minutes to just shred the ball into the box and see if we can just create chaos, essentially. And then low crosses are for players that have a quickness advantage. So if you are a team that is trying to beat offside traps, or you are a team that doesn't win a lot of headers, then you go low crosses, give that smaller, quicker, or maybe big, quick forward an opportunity to just get the first step and score. Typically what I will do is leave mixed crosses on, because I will get the wingers that I want that are going to make the right decisions, or that are good at crossing, and they can pick out what cross they're going to do. But if you really have a star up there who is particularly good at being fast, or particularly good at being big, or finding space to score, then you can do that. And if you're playing against an absolutely packed box and you want to just create chaos because you've got a bunch of bodies in there, whip it. Work the ball in the box is for possession tactics. It is for patient tactics. It is for tactics that are built when you are the better team. It will not force them to just put the ball into the box to try and make something happen. Hit early crosses will do that. But work the ball in the box will allow them to not shoot. It will relieve the burden from shooting from outside the box and trying to score in those opportunities. And they will attempt to work hard off the ball to get a good look inside the box where they can then go and score. Shoot on sight, obviously, green lights. Not necessarily stupid shots, but when a shooting window is there and a player thinks they've got a shot at it, they will take it. And whether a player actually has a shot at it, that's up to the player. They usually don't. Don't let that scare you away from shoot on sight. Late in a game, it's probably what you want to put on. Hit early crosses, like I said, is great for putting the ball into the box. Particularly great if you have either a target man who plants themselves, like a Mitrovic, plants himself in the box and is just very hard to deal with. Whether they're scoring or knocking the ball down for somebody else, getting the ball in early is fantastic. The other scenario is if you've got a lot of speed and the opponent is playing a particularly high line. You got somebody that's good off the ball, they have a lot of pace, and then that early cross is going to hopefully catch them out. If you've got somebody who's great at crossing, I don't know if hit early crosses is necessarily what you want to go for, because if they can get themselves to the byline, then their fantastic crossing ability will make them even more deadly, right? But if they can't get to the byline, then sure, hit early crosses with somebody that's good at crossing. Play for set pieces is fairly obvious, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. Are you good at set pieces? Are you better at set pieces than normal play? Play for set pieces. On this next one, I would recommend you go to your team report. Your team report is over here. If in your team report, your assistant report, they tell you that your team is good at dribbling, you should probably dribble more. If on your team report, they tell you that your team is bad at dribbling, you should probably dribble less. Do we have any dribbling on either side? We're right in the middle, which is why I don't have anything ticked. Keep in mind that you can do this through individual player instructions as well, so only put it on as a team instruction if you feel confident in your overall ability to do one thing or the other. You do not have to tick anything in this area. Your creative freedom, if you want be more disciplined, that is going to take away the opportunity for your players to improvise off of your tactics, while be more expressive is going to provide your players more opportunity to improvise off of your tactics. So if you've got players that you believe have the ability to just find their own way and make things happen for the better, be more expressive is the way to go. If you do not want your players to improvise because they're stupid, be more disciplined and your team will do exactly what you tell them or more what you tell them than before. I know that's the longest section, but catch your breath. We're going into the in transition section where things are going to get easier. I want you to just go right to counter. I want you to just hit counter. In FM20, I've heard from my sources. Nap told me that there's no reason not to have counter on. Why would you not be looking to counter? Especially, think about it, that's the way the modern game is set up. Why would you not look to counter at all when you get on the ball, no matter who you are? Counter press or regroup. Counter press is typically something that I would recommend having on. These little arrows, very helpful. I'll let you know that when you lose the ball, you go forward and try to win it back. If you are getting filleted on the counterattack or playing a team that you know can counterattack you really well, then you should attempt to regroup and the little arrows will go in the opposite direction. Run for your lives, little arrows! Run for your lives! Distribute quickly or slow the pace down. Slow the pace down tells your goalkeeper essentially when they get the ball to try and dictate the tempo. I will usually put that on at the end of a game. In order to help see the game out, my goalkeeper will catch it and go, my leg! Distribute quickly, on the other hand, the goalkeeper will catch it and will actively look to immediately get rid of the ball. And they will look to immediately get rid of the ball wherever you tell them. Are you fast and playing against a high line? Distribute over defense. Are your wings open? On distribution, distribute to the flanks. Do you have a target man? Distribute to the target man. Do you have a playmaker, preferably a deep lying playmaker who can drop between your center backs and get the ball? Distribute to playmaker. Do you have fullbacks you want to get on the ball because you don't trust your center backs, but you want to play the ball short and you don't have a playmaker? Distribute to fullbacks. And do you not mind your center backs getting the ball and playing it out from there because you want to play out from the back? Distribute to center backs. Then you have your distribution type. You can do both of these at the same time. If you want to say throw it out and throw it to playmaker, you can do that. If you want to say take long kicks and take it to playmaker, then they will take a long kick to the playmaker and not try to play it short. But if you do not want to click any of these things and just say, hey, hit the ball long because we don't want to get trapped anymore, you can do that too. And on to our final section, this fabulous out of possession section. Here's my recommendation to you. I have seen a lot of different saves because of our saving saves stuff that we do on stream. I go in and save your saves. If you're subscribed on Twitch, you submit your save file. I look through it. We do it a couple of times a month. It's a great time. Almost every single time, successful teams are going to be playing further up the field. I won the Champions League with Dortmund. We had a short Dortmund save this year. It ended up only being 2 years. And that Champions League, I won it with this line setup. Okay. And this is saying where your forwards and midfielders dig their heels in and where your back line digs their heels in, kind of stops. Typically in Football Manager 20, higher lines are better. I would be very careful playing with a lower line as a worse team. What I have found, especially playing as Llaneros, because when we took this team over 2 years ago, they were the second worst team in this division. Playing with a lower line was just not as successful. For some reason, playing with lower lines as the worst team doesn't really work. But as Dortmund, when we were inviting some pressure and then countering, it worked really well. One of my favorite extra things that's really helped since I learned it is that typically if you are worried about like a 4-4-2, the lines are too far apart, somebody's getting too much space in front of your back line, you can squish your lines with the line of engagement of the defensive line so that you can close that space down a little bit. And now somebody with a defensive role in one of these two will essentially be dropping back almost to your center backs to help cover anybody that's existing in that world. It really helps against the classic 4-2-3-1. The offside trap is a way to play a high line if you don't have fast defensive players, right? So if your center backs have 9 pace, use an offside trap, because that means they're probably intelligent or you're in a really bad league. Either way, an offside trap's more likely than them being able to keep up with a forward who is almost definitely faster than your center back is. So that's when I put the offside trap on. If your teamwork and team cohesion is bad, don't do an offside trap. You can try it. I'm just warning you, I wouldn't do it. I use tighter marking. The Tightmarking system has been fascinating to me this year because they rewrote the entire marking system. You used to be able to break the game. You can't really break the game anymore, which is great. The other side of that is that they rewrote the marking system and they value tight marking a little too much. So if there are a lot of dynamic runners coming from the other team, I mean like inverted wingbacks on attack or defensive midfielders who are overlapping, or maybe even in a 4-4-2, one of these midfielders is getting way ahead of the strikers. That's what I mean when I say dynamic runs. Your center backs will stay devoted to the 2 strikers if you have tighter marking on, and will leave these runners be most of the time, because the new marking system, it just overvalues marking. And it sounds weird to say, but it does. Like, there's no common sense at all in the like, hey, this guy's about to score, we should probably go get him. No common sense at all like that. Keep that in mind when you go to use tighter marking. I typically do not use it. I'm only using it now because we're playing against teams that will only have 1 or 2 people up top, not a lot of dynamic runs, and so we can keep track of them. Your pressing intensity is pretty obvious what that means, how hard your team is looking to press. One thing to keep in mind is the harder you press, the more tired your team is going to get. So if you're playing in the championship, in England, you're playing like 85 matches over the course of a season. You're in Brazil playing a ton of matches. Maybe have some tactics where you don't press a lot, so you're not wearing your team out all the time. Prevent short goalkeeper distribution is, are you going to sell out to prevent the short distribution? Keep in mind that this means the ball will go long. If you can't deal with that, you probably shouldn't prevent short goalkeeper distribution. Stay on feet and get stuck in. If you are struggling to win possession from the other team, I'd recommend trying to get stuck in. If you get a lot of cards and start getting people sent off, turn off, get stuck in. You can also tweak these instructions on individual players. Going to player instructions, you click on somebody, you can tweak tackle harder and ease off tackles. So if it's just one player you're worried about, go in and do it there. But as a team mandate, if you keep getting beat off the dribble, stay on feet is not something that's the end of the world. It keeps you from diving in. You can keep the player in front of you. If they have a really high tempo, then they'll just end up turning the ball over because they can't get by you, which can end up working in your favor. It's worth messing with. Down below, you have your defensive width. Defensive width is how wide your defense is. I really try not to say things like that, or I just reorder the words, but really, your defensive width is how wide your defense is. If you're playing 3 at the back, I tend to go with a wide defensive width, but keep in mind, this is going to allow people to run in the channels a little bit more, those channels between your center backs. If the other team doesn't have wingers, I'll go narrow. Also, if you are the much worse team, play narrow. Playing wide's just going to leave you too exposed to get cut right through the middle. Take away the middle of the park, give them the channels if you can't defend them. And that's it. Hopefully, I've been able to provide you with a couple of tactical ideas and different ways to use each one in circumstance. And if you have any questions, of course, join the Discord and ask me. Slide into my DMs on Twitter, Instagram. All of the DMs are open. I do still read all of them, fortunately. And you can meet me on Twitch as well. Or you could just fly to Tampa. We can hang out on a beach sometime. Even though that is probably not a good idea right now, But hopefully it's a better idea by the time this comes out. Who knows? Maybe it's a worse idea. We are Florida after all. Can we get anything right? No. Cuban sandwiches. They were invented in Tampa. Look it up. We got one thing right. If you don't know what it is, you're missing out. And you should come here to have a Cuban sandwich. That's all. Okay. We're done, Zealand. Okay, we're done. Just one more thing.